a lot of comparisons were made to the situation in the late 1940s and the situation today, meaning there were tremendous challenges faced after World War II. The founding fathers, as they're called, came together, created an amazing set of institutions and long-term security and economic policies that secured America's interests and prosperity. Now sometimes we look back with a little, perhaps too much nostalgia, and I think it's an analogy that actually ought to be analyzed a little bit more. But nevertheless, that's the analogy that we look at today when we say, well, the country is facing tremendous challenges. We're in a war. It will be a long-term struggle. We're in a world of globalization with rapid changes going on in so many different spheres. And yet, we don't see the kind of coming together either by the public or the opinion leaders, as they're called, that we think we saw in the late 1940s, when there was a bipartisan consensus, literally Republicans and Democrats, and it appears that the public broadly supported historic changes in the extent of America's engagement with the world. I mean, if you compare to where they were before 1945 and what they were supporting within 5 years after, peacetime alliances, a Marshall Plan, and so on, it was historic. And we compare that to today, where all the polls show tremendous polarization on the basis of partisanship. That it is political party or political identification that explains most of the split in views in the country. And we have fewer institutions today, it would seem, that are here and able to address this polarization. Fewer institutions that help build towards a consensus. The media doesn't seem to do it, academia and think tanks don't seem to do it in the way that they may have before. Hence the need, and I think some of the passion in our discussions, for organizations like the American Assembly. Because in a sense, and the American Assembly was started around 1950, it literally is a relic of the past that could be relevant to the future. It was set up, you know, through President Eisenhower, someone who, you know, we think of President Eisenhower, we think of the middle way. And the middle way, we think of a type of building consensus between, you know, reconciling divergent views. And that's badly needed today. I think that was the feeling that we got in our discussions. And I think ultimately that's one of the biggest things that this project can do. It can bring together different opinion leaders with different views and help to reconcile them, or to come up with some sense of a new consensus, in as much as there's any consensus to have. And second, through the project and disseminating the findings of the project, build some better public consensus. Because I think when you look at the polls, the public is also confused. They're not only polarized, they're a bit confused about where the nation is going and ought to be going. And I have further evidence and data on that, looking at the public opinion polls, but that's the bottom line. And so they're groping for something. And we, looking back at the late 1940s and that historical analogy, want something like a containment policy, you know, containment or Marshall Plan, you know, words, things that can crystallize a consensus. And the world might be more complicated today. There's not a single threat. So it's going to be messier by nature, but the public is still looking for something, I think. By 2008 would be a good time to have it, when a new administration is coming into power. So I think ultimately that's what this project can achieve, and it would be a tremendous accomplishment. It's an ambitious objective to really try to come up with a new NSC 68, if you will. That's perhaps not the right analogy, but some document that can help move people forward, come to a greater understanding of the long-term challenges and what the United States should do.